Hello friends, welcome back to the Sip and Smoke podcast with myself and Billy. How you doing, Billy?
I'm doing well. A little bit better when this bell comes off my head, I think, because it's driving me insane already.
Well, but, it is Christmas soon, isn't it?
Exactly, got to get in the Christmas spirit a little bit more this time, so it'll stay for a little bit. But of course, yeah, doing well, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, good, thanks. We've got a special guest, haven't we? So
we have, of course.
Do you want to introduce them?
Of course. So none other than George Frakes from 1573 Cigars. George, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good. Thank you for calling me special. It made me feel good about myself. Yeah, I'm doing really well, thanks. It's a crazy day weather-wise.
A bit of a treacherous drive, right?
Yeah. But that's part of the nature of it.
Exactly. It's
always living life on the edge.
Exactly. I'm taking this off because it's driving me insane.
It's going to be loud, yeah.
I think if not, viewers are going to start getting annoyed about the bell. So
yeah.
We'll put that to one side and we'll keep you as Santa. We'll
yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, we've got all the tinsel and stuff behind us anyway, so...
Yeah, I think...
keeps the vibe going.
This is about as far as our artistic flair goes, I think, with...
Very Christmas.
Christmas decoration.
Yeah. Very Christmas.
Yeah, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, shall we move on to the cigars?
Yes, of course, 100%,
yeah. Wonderful. Well, I'll start. Might as well. So, I have the Charter Oak Connecticut Shade Rothschild. This is 4.5 inches long with a 50 ring gauge. It has a Connecticut wrapper with a Sumatran binder and Nicaraguan filler. And I've had Charter Oaks before and I loved every single one. So I'm really excited to get this one lit. But you guys have different cigars, don't you?
I'll go, yeah. We have the Olmec Toro this time from Foundation Cigars. This one comes in at 6 inches long with a ring gauge of 52. It has a San Andres Negro wrapper with a Nicaraguan binder and filler. Again, not my first time with one of these cigars. Thoroughly enjoyed them last time. We did an event quite recently.
Really nice.
Went down really, really well. So yeah, really looking forward to it. And of course, George, yourself, you've got the exact same cigar.
I have the Olmec Toro as well. I quite literally can't smoke enough of these.
Yeah,
they're actually mind-blowingly sort of complex, and I love these.
Yeah, I think we had a conversation before the event, and we was a bit like, we're not sure where it's going to take us, kind of thing. Yeah. And then upon first light, all the way through, it's just kind of like, this is just magnificent from the outset on. It's a truly great blend. So, I mean, we'll talk a little bit about it later on, go into a little bit of the history of the Olmec and the brand and everything like that. And then,
of course. But we want to get to know you, George. So, for those who don't know you, who are you and what do you do?
Well, it's
very
a good
broad question to start.
It's a good question. So, my name is George. I'm managing director of a company called 1573 Cigars. We import and distribute Foundation cigars in the UK, as well as working on some other cigar education projects and so forth. And that is, in a nutshell, me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your job entails quite a few interesting things, though, right? Because you're with like the ships and stuff as well.
Yeah.
I think I remember you mentioned it before. You get to travel a lot and see some things.
Yeah, so I'm very lucky that in another capacity as well, I train people on cigars internationally in private environments, and it's really, really amazing thing to do. It's really interesting because I get to meet worldwide hundreds and hundreds of people, all of whom are non-smokers, but all of who work with cigars. Right. And so it's quite interesting because it's my job to really ignite a passion for cigars in someone who actually has no way of igniting that passion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
I was going to say that's an interesting way to do it, and I think it must be quite challenging in some areas because I mean we had an event a couple of weeks ago. Oh no, you didn't do the event, but we did the event, and a guy came and he was there just for his mates. It was 3 guys, and one of them was like, "I don't smoke," so it was a bit like, "Oh, okay," but when you get that, you automatically think they're going to be not kind of turn their nose up at it, but they were really quite inquisitive about it and asking the questions. Okay, so what the difference is between a cigar and the cigarette, and what's this and what's that kind of thing. And it was quite refreshing to see someone that has kind of no clue, but no interest either, kind of thing. And they're still asking the relevant questions and trying to understand a little bit more about why so many people are sort of involved in cigars and the culture of cigars. It's as I say, you must have many of those people that kind of sit there and ask questions, or are kind of a bit against it, but are like, what's the point, kind of thing.
It's more of a challenge. Yeah,
it's particularly when it's their job to look after quite a lot of cigars in a really high-end environment, but they've never smoked a cigar and have no intention to. It's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, it is. But my work really sort of always comes back to foundation, and in that sense, 1573 is still very much my full-time thing. So yeah, it's an interesting life to live.
I can imagine.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
It's quite full on for you, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't feel like I've had a day off in months, to be honest with you.
I can imagine this.
We just moved house with a toddler as well, so if I look like physically dead, that'd be why.
I'm sure you look great. You look great.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Thank you.
As you said, obviously it's got a high stress, a lot of work to be done. As you say, you don't feel like you have a lot of time off. But 1573, if we're correct in thinking, is quite a small team, right? There's not too many people involved, but
no,
who is kind of the face and who is the back team, kind of thing.
So myself, I do sort of everything cigar related, directly cigar related. So we're talking about sort of the actual coming out and seeing you guys, and that is a big part of my job, and that's the part I really love. I also take care of a lot of the logistics side of things, supply chain and communications, so forth. There's Winston. Winston is my fellow director, and he takes care of a lot of marketing and helps a lot with strategy. And Damo's the third director, and Damo is, if you look him up, the press call him the star boy of deals.
Right.
He's Damo's a real business genius, and he's we wouldn't be able to do this without Winston or Damo, very much so. They are absolute geniuses in their field. So
you're quite a strong trio, really.
Yeah. But at least they're strong. Yeah. They're strong.
You're out doing the legwork.
You're doing fantastic. You really are.
You've got to do the legwork. You're here, everywhere, running around.
I've got a driving license.
You utilise for that bit.
Yeah.
But it's mental to think a whole sort of supplier comes with 3 people. It's unheard of, right? I mean, you've got other suppliers and other brands that are dramatically larger.
We do have, so those are the 3 directors.
Okay.
And then we do have our office manager as well, who wouldn't be able to do it without. And of course, our accountants and financial advisor, who I very much wouldn't be able to do this without either. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got kind of going back to the whole thing. The foundations are there, and I suppose now you got that choice of now expanding or keeping it kind of tight knit and moving forward. And I think you can also kind of stay true to your own molds and your own kind of policies and stuff like that. You can kind of take it wherever you want, I guess, if you keep it nice and small. But
absolutely, it does give a degree of freedom. It means there's more work.
Of course,
we could have more people on board. And we may do in future, but keeping it this way at the moment, while still sort of in the first few years of a business, means that it can take us in lots of different directions.
Of course,
it means that there isn't too much change sort of structurally when you're doing that.
It's a cool way to run it.
Yeah. How did those connections happen? Because if I'm correct, Winston, he's a former member of a very big band.
I was going to say Mumford & Sons.
Mumford & Sons.
Phenomenal band, to be fair.
So, how did that happen? I mean, he's currently really into politics right now, isn't he? So, but how did that
crossover kind of happen?
Well, it's a good question. So, I think it was 2020. I met Winston through Cigars, and we got on. We became really good friends.
Nice.
And then, long story short, we wanted to work with Cigars and specifically with Foundation. And And so then Winston said, I know a good friend of mine, Damo, who makes things happen. And he makes things happen really well. And so Damo actually reached out to Nick on Instagram. And and then Nick actually replied, which is a wonderful thing. It's sort of random, when you got, tens of thousands of followers and someone random messages you, you're like, yeah, I'll have a Zoom meeting. And then it went from there.
So, that's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because we was going to ask how the kind of the Nick connection came in and how you managed to get on board with him and how he got on board with the whole bringing it into the UK and stuff. It's quite. It just seems like it's so far apart, but somehow you guys have managed to bring it together and bring us such a fantastic brand. Really, it's truly impressive.
It's really interesting. I first met Nick. So the Nick connection came back. I first met Nick in 2018. Right, at Highclere Castle. And I was blown away by his cigars, and I became a really big fan of the cigars. But I was in retail, and I was quite frustrated that we couldn't get any of the cigars in the UK, and I had quite a lot of people asking for them. And so it became sort of a long-term goal to see them on the shelves. And then once we'd actually got to know Nick, it was actually Nick that brought about the subject. He wants his cigars in the UK, and I was like, we want your cigars in the UK. So it was really all very organic.
It kind of tied together quite nicely then.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you did.
I was going to say, to be fair,
it's one of my favourite bands. Brands.
Bands.
The bands are great.
Yeah, the bands are great.
Yeah, they are cool. I think we spoke about them quite frequently before in previous videos, the design and everything that goes around. And as you say, it always tied back to the foundation. I know I keep saying that, but it ties back to the roots of everything, like the Olmec people, and obviously we'll get onto that a little bit later. But it is truly it just all makes sense. I don't know how, but it all just comes in and works really, really well.
Yeah, it does. Every there are so many tiny details there, that bring the artwork together, and that's something that I really love about it as well.
Really fantastic.
Yeah, we're doing our best to try and meet Nick as well, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah, it'd be great to finally put a face to a name kind of thing. Obviously, we've seen him online and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It'd be a great opportunity to meet with him.
It will happen.
I hope so.
Yeah, we hope so.
It will happen.
Maybe something will come in the future. We'll see. But
I mean, he went to Leeds, didn't he?
Yeah.
So he did an event with Ray, which I heard was a really good success. Yeah. Great success. So
it's just unfortunate on our part that we're so far away from everything else going on.
We are. We're right in the bum of England.
Yeah, literally.
Well, that is, I mean, it's both you can look at it like, so it's unfortunate, but it's also fortunate.
100%.
Because when people come here, they're not distracted.
No, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
There's less going on, I guess.
You've got more quality time here. More quality time.
Quiet in some aspects. It's quiet around here. Sometimes. It can be the complete opposite.
That's an asset.
But yeah.
What is the significance behind the date 1573? I know you've touched on it before in a previous video, but for those who don't know.
So, I'm going to be really careful here because I'm, in part, I'm a historian, and I hate listening to historians speak. So I'll try and stay out of the weeds. But, long story short, there was a man who's a Welsh priest who wrote a book called The Chronicles of England, and it was published in the 1590s. Now, we actually think of the later sort of 1570s as when people started smoking in the UK. Quite often 1574 is the date, 1577 are two really common dates. But this book, The Chronicles of England, is regarded as the best colloquial account of the time from a non-biased party. It's quite an incredible book, and it actually, if you want an idea of what it was like to live in the UK in the 1500s, it's worth reading. It's not really worth reading otherwise. So there's
it's a niche market. A niche market.
So in the book, he notes, quite importantly, I know the passage actually, he notes 1573, it is in these days that the taking in of the smoke of the Indian herb called tobacco, whereby it passeth from the head into the mouth and the lungs, is taken up greatly in England, and not without effect against engendered diseases of the inward parts, such as the lungs.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's incredible that you can just reel that off the top of your
I was
head.
thinking it's like a Bible verse.
I'm not 100% that's verbatim. But yeah, I might have got that a bit mixed up. But long story short, the first sentence is right.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's really.
First sentence is right. And the really interesting thing there is that, so we know that 1573 tobacco is being smoked at the docks by Portuguese and Spanish sailors.
Mm-hmm.
This wouldn't have been noted in court records at the time due to the conflicts of empire. So the Portuguese Empire, the Spanish Empire, and the British Empire sort of really didn't, and sort of the kingdoms didn't really speak to each other.
Okay.
So to admit that, it was the Spanish that started smoking here would have been a bit off.
Yeah.
But that is what happened. And originally tobacco was used from 1573 really as a medicine. So particularly against diseases of the lungs, against rheumatism and a few other things. It's still used as a medicine today in a few different ways. They're trialling nicotine for MS and Parkinson's.
Oh, really?
So, this is where I think it's crazy, because the stigma around tobacco and everything is always that it's a health problem, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose, as you just said, there's definitely benefits to it. And again, that's another question that we kind of get asked sometimes. Like, people say that cigars have benefits, and it's like, well, they do. But everyone's like, well, it's tobacco. But then they instantly go straight to tobacco with cigarettes and chemicals and all of that stuff that gets added.
Awful,
They kind of don't marry it.
So here's an interesting one. So human beings humans essentially are the only member of the hominids species, the hominid genus, that have a genetic mutation that makes us resistant to the hydrocarbons in smoke. Right? So Neanderthals particularly, that were also used to fire, one of the reasons why they may have died out is they're prolific. They used fire sort of prolifically throughout society. We believe that. But their bodies weren't resistant to the hydrocarbons that causes growths within DNA and mutate DNA. Whereas human beings, we've actually evolved ways to be essentially be around smoke and survive. So it's quite literally in our DNA, in our sequencing.
It's like evolution. It kind of used to be bad for us, and now it's absolutely fine, kind of thing. Which is a bonus for all of us. I mean, cigars are a great thing. It brings people together. The social aspect, as we always bang on about, is I think it definitely has a lot of benefits, right?
100%.
It does actually. You know, my grandfather was. I think my grandfather was prescribed a pipe for stress. So the doctor told him to smoke a pipe.
See.
I'm not saying that should be a prescription. I think prescribing smoking would be a terrible thing, but it's. But I do think, I do think it's interesting. There are always benefits to everything, no matter what it is.
100%.
I mean, it's ironic we're next to a doctor's surgery and a pharmacy. So.
It is, we always have that little joke around the office. It's like we must be their worst enemies. They're trying to stop people smoking, and we're here selling tobacco products and all of that stuff. So they must hate us. But it's two sides of the coin kind of thing. It's quite funny. But
exactly. And there are no chemicals and
no,
cigars,
exactly.
so,
it's completely different to any other types of smoking. So.
I'm interested in finding more out about this health benefit thing, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's to do with, so I'm definitely not an expert in this. I'm really not. But it's something to do with the way that it can help the shakes. Okay. So nicotine is a neurostimulant. It helps you concentrate.
It's a relaxant as well, right? Does it make you kind of relax a little bit or something along them lines? Yeah,
exactly. And it helps you, it essentially helps you concentrate, and to a degree helps you think. So if it helps the nervous system function in some way.
So is that similar to nootropics?
Yeah, nicotine could be classed as a nootropic.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm way out of my depth. I've not got a clue.
I see all the time on TikTok. There's a guy that I follow. He's a bodybuilder, and he has his own energy drink brand, but it's got a lot of nootropics in it, and it essentially just like George said, helps you concentrate and focus.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see how that's linked.
Yeah. It is really interesting, isn't it? Nootropics are really weird and fascinating things, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. L-theanine. That's a big one.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of those.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I'm not going to comment. I'm way out of my depth. I ain't got a clue, to be honest. But yeah, I think why not talk a bit about the cigars? I think.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, I'm just going to start off and just say this is as good as ever. First photo of these cigars, really, really nice, quite savoury, a little bit of spice here and there, but I'm really, really enjoying it. How about yourself? What you thinking to the CT show?
I love it, and do you know what? The first time I was trying this, I got coffee straight away.
Yeah.
Instantly. Like, there's a nice sweetness. There's an ever so slight spiciness in background, but it's so slight. It's creamy, smooth. It's just magnificent as always. So thank you.
It's interesting. I love hearing the tasting notes from you guys because your palates are insane.
Some of them are just outlandish, but it's just trying to make the connection for us, right? It's just
I mean, once you break it down, it makes more sense because
of course.
Because people obviously hear us say things like coffee or chocolate. They're like, how do you even get that? But you know, you break it down into the categories. You know, you've got the sweetness, you've got earth, you've got salt, dry, and then you break it down from there.
So yeah, do you? Here's a question for you, right? Okay. How do you break that down? How do you break down just from the core flavors into the sort of associated sort of specialties, if you like?
It's an interesting one. I mean, it's like you can kind of say I'm getting a sweetness. You know, you pick out a sweetness, and then you say, okay, what have I eaten or had to drink before that reminds me of that sweetness? And then you can just kind of connect the dots a little bit. Yeah. I don't know if you'll be able to put it a little bit better, but
no. I mean, the way I say it is, I think your smell and your palate is interlinked very, very tightly, right? So I always say to people, like, oh, this tastes like the smell of something, or this smells like the taste of something.
Yeah.
But as Lewis was saying, you have a wheel of, your palate will pick up 5 different senses, and I always forget the 5th one or the 4th one or whatever it is. But you got sweet, bitter, salt. What are the other 2 now? See, I told you I'd end up forgetting them. But anyway,
dry.
It might be
dry. Earth.
Yeah, your palate picks up.
You're talking about You're talking about palate.
Bitterness, sweetness, saltiness, and then there's 2 others, but I cannot remember off the top of my. Oh, spice, which you'll feel at the back of your lips, back of your tongue, I think, and another one anyway. But basically, when you feel it in part of your palate, you'll get a little bit of a sensation. That sensation, we can all agree, if a characteristic in a cigar is sweet, to all of us, it will be sweet. But that sweetness to me and to you might be completely different based on what you've smelled, what you've tasted previously, and based on what you've eaten in the day and all of that stuff. So say you've had, say, like a vanilla donut or something like that, and you've had something really sweet, and then you go sit down and you smoke a cigar that gives a little bit of a sweetness. That sweetness then may reflect that vanilla that you had a little bit earlier.
Interesting.
Same as like things like leather and stuff, because obviously none of us go around eating leather. But again, you get that kind of smell or the sensation of the characteristics of the leather that you can kind of adapt and associate with the flavour that you're getting. And that's it's a very loose way of getting to things, but it's more like word association, right? You kind of associate what the sensation is to something that you can relate to, basically.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So do you find that, that with you guys, it depends on what you've had to eat recently as well? Do you find you compare it to things that you've eaten more recently, or can it bring back sort of olfactory memories of flavours and smells?
In my opinion, I think it goes back.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. As I say, it's like a memory thing. You get that sensation, you think, oh, that's reminded me of something. And what we say is, whatever you're tasting isn't wrong, regardless of whether people say it is or it isn't. As I say, everyone's palate's different.
Yeah.
So if I'm sitting here and I'm enjoying this cigar or sampling this cigar and I say, I'm getting a bit of vanilla. Well, Lewis could be, or as you say, you're enjoying the same cigar as me. You're sitting there thinking, well, I'm not getting vanilla. But you may be getting a sweetness, but that sweetness may be something slightly different.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of whatever it means to you. And the easiest way of doing it for us when we do a review or something, first thing that pops into your head is like, sweet, that's exactly what I'm tasting. That's what's going to go down. So not everyone is meant to agree on what they can taste.
Yeah.
But it's the characteristics and the underlying of sweetness, bitterness, this, and then you relate that bitterness to a coffee or a leather or this or that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm quite literally, as you're saying this, I'm quite literally tasting different things and seeing it in a different way. That's a really lovely way of putting it.
Yeah.
No one's ever said it to me like that. Thank you. Yeah,
That's
you've got to
okay.
try this. You've got to try this. Yeah.
I mean, I think some of it comes down to placebo as well.
Yeah.
You know, if someone says, you know, if you think, well, I'm not tasting anything, and then someone says to you, oh, I taste chocolate, then you're going to think, do you know what? Maybe I'll taste a bit of chocolate. So it's, you know, it can be placebo, but then placebo is placebo. You're still going to taste that.
Still tasting it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You know,
Yeah,
so it doesn't
you're
matter.
Still tasting it.
Yeah, I think there's that whole thing of people sampling cigars and they'll watch reviews and everything and they'll take exactly what everyone's saying like as gospel, right? That's what they're sampling. I'm sampling the same cigar. He's getting that. I'm getting this. I must be doing something wrong. It's not the case. It's just your palate's different.
Yeah.
You can't pick up on nuances or you can't pick up on the same things.
I guess people eat and drink different things. Don't
Exactly.
They do.
Yeah.
I only eat bread and drink water. So yeah, everything tastes of bread and water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It is
you're
kind
too
of that.
right. Yeah.
And a good way to do it as well, because
Food groups.
I think what we did to begin with at the start, you have like a flavour wheel or like it is a flavour wheel, right?
Yeah.
The thing.
Yeah.
And it gives you basically the characteristics and it will give you different things. So say it was like a malted barley type flavour or like a savoury or whatever. It will then give you different options of what savoury notes it could be.
Yeah.
And then you can then look at that and think, okay, I can connect it to that. Or I can connect it to that. So you can do it on a visual aspect or you can do it completely straight off the top of your head.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I really like that.
we use it all the time. We've got a book from Hunters and Frankel.
Yeah.
And we use that for almost every cigar that we sample.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and then we rate it out of 10.
Yeah.
Nice.
We'll
Nice.
keep them ratings.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes, we sample so many cigars.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not as many as yourself or
No,
other people, but
you sample way more cigars than me. Yeah.
do you solely stick to Foundation now?
I mainly smoke Foundation. Yeah.
Okay.
I do like to smoke other brands, but I'm fortunate in the fact that I get a chance to smoke Foundation a lot, and that's a brand. It's a brand I smoked a lot before I worked with them as well. But yeah, I smoke a lot of interesting, weird things as well, as we all do.
Yeah, of course.
The weirder, the better.
But going on from that then, I think there's a little bit more of a backstory around the name of this cigar that we're sampling, George.
Yes.
The Foundation Olmec. Would you like to sort of dive into the history of the Olmec and the relation between history and today's?
I love this stuff.
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Well, long story short, we've got a lot to thank the Olmec for, because the Olmec were the first Mesoamerican civilization. They lived around the Veracruz region of Mexico, around the place that we call San Andreas nowadays. And the Olmec were the first people to use rubber. They were the first people to build pyramids in the Central Americas. They were the first people in the Americas to use a calendar system. And they were the first cigar smokers that we know of. They were the first cigar smokers. So the Olmec here, the cigar itself, you could argue that every cigar then therefore is a tribute to the Olmec, right? Because they were the first cigar smokers. So everything that follows that is just following the Olmec lineage.
Yeah.
But this cigar specifically uses a very specific strain of San Andreas for the wrapper.
Okay.
This is the oldest seed genus in the tobacco world. It is one of the oldest seed genuses still in continuous use in the agricultural world. And this is the original tobacco as smoked by the Olmec. So the wrapper on these is the original Olmec cigar tobacco. And that is sort of the real homage to the Olmec. And so I really love, there's a small detail on this band here, which if you look at the Olmec band, there's a tiny picture of a cigar.
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to do.
And that picture, that's the oldest picture of a cigar. There's a 3,500-year-old stone carving.
Oh, wow.
So that little cigar there, sticking out of the Olmec head. They carved these huge stone heads that we started discovering in the 1960s.
Right.
And no one really knew what it was at first. But then since the 1960s, they put together that essentially it was a civilization. And because it's still quite early on, in archaeological terms, we don't know too much.
Right.
I've pretty much just said everything we know. But yeah, it's amazing to be, because a lot of this stuff was discovered by us in Europe in the 19th century, sort of during the boom of archaeology. But to be around now, as we're really beginning to get to grips with discovering a civilization, is amazing. Mm-hmm. It's the same sort of time period as since the beginning of sort of the interest in Egyptology and the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I always just find it fascinating how much thought of everything in history goes into each and every cigar that Foundation create.
Yeah,
and as you say, you always use sort of rarity kind of tobaccos, as I say, with the wrapper on this one and the CT broadleaf with Nick Melillo. And
well, this is the thing, right? Because Nick at one point ran one of, if not the largest premium cigar factory in the world. Mm-hmm. And they were rolling 146,000 cigars a day, right? So he created this factory, but they didn't grow a single leaf. So he was purchasing all the tobacco.
Right.
He was in charge of the factory, in charge of blending, and in charge of purchasing all the tobacco. And when you purchase that much tobacco, you start to get access to stuff that no one else has.
Right.
And so you see that time and time again throughout Foundation, that he has like pretty amazing access to some really mind-blowing tobaccos that you have to roll 146,000 cigars a day for a decade to have access to.
I mean, he's definitely put in the legwork, and he's very dedicated to it. But I mean, his hard work definitely paid off with these, right? And as you say, he now has access to the most rare sort of tobaccos here and there that you can kind of have. So it kind of sets you apart a little bit in that aspect as well, because as you say, not many brands are using that same tobacco from the same points. And
100%. I just love this history stuff.
It's
fantastic.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I was watching a podcast a while ago. It was Joe Rogan podcast, and he had Graham Hancock on, and he was talking about some people who lived in the Amazon. Now they discovered that millions of people lived in the Amazon years and years ago. I can't remember the dates, but we're
not quite as clued up as George with the dates.
Of course.
No. I don't know this.
But they were wondering how they survived because the soil was poor. And then they found out that these people created their own soil. And I can't remember the process behind it. I feel like it was something to do with burning soil.
Okay.
But they created their own soil. And I've always wondered whether they grew tobacco as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that always just sits with me.
I think, to be honest, obviously it's all speculation, right? But I suppose if they're able to and smart enough to kind of figure out how to create their own type of soil, I feel like growing a plant from that, like tobacco leaves and stuff, it wouldn't be far-fetched. I feel like there's got to be a connection there somewhere, especially if, as you say, they're depicted enjoying sampling cigars all the time anyway. It's got to be somewhere like that.
And the amount of millions of people that live there.
Yeah, of course.
That's incredible. I mean, it must have been an agricultural civilization. It must have been a farming society.
Yeah.
And tobacco is still used in the Amazon in many different ways. So I totally believe they would have grown their own tobacco. Do you know how long ago it was, roughly?
I wouldn't be able to remember on top of my head, unfortunately.
I thought you just looked at me then as if I was going to know. Don't come to me.
I was hoping.
I haven't seen the podcast.
Unfortunately, but
don't you worry. But but what my bets would have been that it wouldn't have been this tobacco. It would have been Tabacum rustica.
Right.
Which is a much older form of tobacco. So, and rustica is really interesting. Have you ever smoked rustica?
No.
Okay, this is a bit mind blowing, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So, this is Nicotiana, and everything we smoke is Nicotiana.
Is that the nicotine content?
Yeah, that is the strain of Tabacum. That is the strain of tobacco, and that is tobacco you see nowadays. But still. Throughout the Amazon, Central Americas, still in indigenous use, you see a lot of rustica. And you see some of it in pipe tobacco and so forth. But the best way to put it, this is 2 to 5% nicotine.
Okay.
I think you told us about this previously.
Yeah, 2 to 5% nicotine. And I think Rustica is like 12 to 15% nicotine.
God, that's going to be a strong kick.
It's a hallucinogenic experience. The lethal dose of nicotine, if you've never had any previous exposure, it goes up really quickly.
Right.
Yeah, really, really quickly, really, to huge levels. But if you've never had any exposure, the lethal dose is 64 milligrams. They make like snus more powerful than that.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say the pouches we've sampled there are like 150 milligrams.
So Rustica then, therefore, that they would have grown in the Amazon, I know they've grown in the Amazon, would essentially be designed to be a shamanic experience. It would take you as close to death, it would poison your body, cleanse your body, and it would be a religious experience.
Kind of like ayahuasca.
Yeah, I believe some people use Rustica tea the day before ayahuasca to cleanse the body.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is there any like I'm out of my depth again, but is there any like flavour characteristic from I'd assume from the sound of it it'd be really like bitter and quite horrible.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
I have smoked it, but it was a long time ago. What we should do is I'll get us some Rustica and we'll smoke it and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I'm straight in that toilet. I'm straight in the toilet after.
You'll be green by the after that. I think my nicotine tolerance might help me out a little bit, but I think even still, I think I'd probably...
Yeah, I'm hoping mine would, but I wouldn't place any bets on it.
No, I don't think I would.
I'll be writing out tasting notes in the back of an ambulance. They'd be cutting off my leg.
Yeah, we'd all come in, we'd have nothing left. There's just no fingers, nothing.
Oh, goodness. So we talked a little bit about the Olmec, and it's very, very interesting story. Let's move on to the Charter Oak. So Foundation offer the Connecticut Shade and the Connecticut Broadleaf.
Yep.
Why did Foundation decide to create 2 varieties?
We're assuming that the blend itself is the exact same, right, between the two, but the wrapper leaf is just the difference?
Yeah.
So it's a good question, actually, because there are actually 3 varieties of Charter Oak.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We don't yet see the middle one here in the UK. It's called, in Europe, it's called the Charter Oak Original. So the difference between the 3 is they're all an homage to Connecticut cigars. Connecticut produced a lot of cigars.
Right.
And you have the broadleaf. We know Connecticut broadleaf. Mm-hmm. And the entire blend is different on each 3.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Entire blend.
Okay.
So the broadleaf is essentially the Maduro. Mm-hmm. It's going to be stronger, sweeter. The shade is really interesting. That is another form of Connecticut tobacco, Connecticut Shade, but it's an entirely different tobacco altogether, but still sort of fairly unique to Connecticut. A lot of it's grown in Ecuador nowadays. Okay. But Nick's one of the few people who are really championing its return to Connecticut. Mm-hmm. And the original, it sits in between the 2. Okay. So it's got a lovely sort of Rosado, Colorado wrapper.
Nice.
But yeah, essentially light, medium and full.
Oh, okay. So you've got one for each sort of flavour profile or strength profile. Okay.
Light, medium and full. And the idea is that Nick wanted to... Because obviously it's incredible tobacco he gets, right? It's amazing stuff. But he wanted to sort of present it in a really accessible form. And that is the Charter Oak. Mm-hmm. Let's say you want to smoke a Connecticut broadleaf cigar at an accessible point before you smoke the still fairly accessible, but a little bit more in price, the Tabernacle range. Mm-hmm. Then you can smoke the Charter Oak broadleaf and you can get to experience what a broadleaf cigar is. Mm-hmm. And the way he's done it with the Charter Oak series is really interesting because you're looking at the same sort of quality of tobacco as the rest of the Foundation line. But it comes from different parts of the plant.
Okay.
So let's say he uses the same plant equally for the Tabernacle and the Connecticut broadleaf Charter Oak, right? But the Tabernacle use leaves from the whole plant.
Right.
But the Charter Oak only uses Seco.
Is this for the strength, to keep the strength profiles
That's
in
what I was gonna ask
and
you.
around it?
It's a good question. It's the strength is still up there, right? Whereas Seco is usually a bit lighter.
Yeah.
However, the reason he did that is because you have more leaves in that part of the plant.
Right, okay.
With a higher yield per square metre of land comes a lower price. And that is how he achieved that quality at that price point.
That's
impressive.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
This is what I mean. He's just kind of like a pioneer in all of this, right? He kind of figures out what other people can't.
Yeah.
Which kind of just gives him that.
I'd love to go there.
Edge. Yeah.
Just to visit the factory and the fields, like such a dream.
We should go to
honestly.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
We should go to Connecticut. It's an amazing place.
I want to see the River Valley.
Yeah, the River Valley.
Yeah.
We can go fishing.
Sounds
Let's
do it. Let's plan it.
We'll plan it after the
Good
podcast.
Italian food.
Let's go for Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we mentioned the CT shed and everything, and we wanted to ask a little bit about the band. I know we touched on the Olmec band and the significance and why it's depicted the way it is. The Charter Oak, it boasts a tree, and we'd assume it's an oak tree.
It is.
What's the significance there with the Charter Oak brand? I suppose it kind of fits with the Charter Oak tree kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a good question, right? That's actually why I asked Nick. Because with the Olmec, for instance, you've got an Olmec head.
Yes.
With the Tabernacle, you've got Haile Selassie, and you've got the Tabernacle and everything. But this is a tree, and it's not a person. And usually it's a person.
Yeah.
In the case of foundation. This is a really important tree. So the Charter Oak was a white oak tree, and it's the symbol of Hartford, Connecticut. And it's where the Charter of Connecticut was signed. So it is the symbol of Connecticut. But it's really important place, actually, and it's where so the Charter of Connecticut became much of the Constitution of the United States.
Right.
So it's where that first version of that was signed. So it's an homage again to Connecticut, those Connecticut cigars, Connecticut tobacco, and the sort of US cigar industry in terms of production. You know, I was talking to Nick recently, and he's doing some research at the moment, but there's good evidence that the first cigar factory was in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you when I hear more information from Nick. Or maybe Nick can tell you, but it's quite an incredible thing.
So this isn't confirmed yet. It's just
no. There's a plaque in the ground saying first cigar factory, but as with anything historical,
They're not
you need to have enough to say yes, this is the first cigar factory. As a historian, I'd need to see lots.
that's incredible. I mean, fingers crossed you can find out. That's
Yeah.
and then he'll make another blend with a factory on it.
But yeah, this is kind of an insight for you guys watching as well or listening. As you can quite clearly see, there's quite a theme with Foundation, and the name and everything ties it in very well, as we mentioned. But everything kind of goes back to the root of everything. History plays a massive part in the brand, and it's, by my account, probably one of the only ones that take it that one step further to kind of bring it all into everything that we've come from and evolved into.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, isn't it? Because we tend to think of Nicaragua, the cigars are made in Nicaragua, we're talking about sort of the Central Americas and Connecticut, and you tend to think of these as places with not as much cigar history specifically as the rest of the world.
Right.
But what I love about what Nick does is he brings it back around, and his point is that there is always cigar history. There is as much cigar history as elsewhere in these places. You should go looking for it.
It's a good way to look at it. I think that's the same. You can put that across, obviously, the board, right? As long as you're looking for the right things and you're looking in the right places, you'll definitely find that connection here and there. But I suppose enough about sort of the brand and everything like that. Kind of, we want to know a little bit more about yourself and kind of why is it you got into enjoying cigars, smoking cigars, and how that kind of came about. How did that happen?
How did I start smoking cigars? It's a good question. I started smoking cigars quite early on. So I think I actually had my first cigar at 16. It was legal at the time to smoke 16. It was legal. I think I had my first cigar at 16. And I always really loved sort of cigars, the ritual of smoking cigars and everything. And I guess I started smoking them, and I've realised this quite early on. I realised what they mean to me and what they mean to other people. And it can apply to why I continue to smoke cigars now. It's the same reason why I started smoking cigars. And that's because I believe that it is sort of inherently a very important thing to do as a human being. If you choose to do it, I'll never ever say anyone should smoke. If you choose to do it, it can become a very important part of being a human being. So there's so few things in this modern world that bring us that controlled sense of fire. And with that controlled sense of fire, you're quite literally tapping into a really ancient part of the brain.
Right.
Sort of, if you like, the reptilian and mammalian brain rather than the human brain. And it will begin to strip away fear and begin to strip away preconceptions, and it will help you be in a place of actual insight and clarity rather than wandering around like a madman, which is what I usually do.
That's a very interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think when you ask pretty much everybody why they enjoy cigars or why they smoke cigars, or it's always, and to be fair, my answer kind of depicts this as well, right? It's that little bit of time to yourself. It's that minute where say an hour where you can just sit back, relax, have a bit of time to yourself and reflect on things. And, it's just you and the cigar, it brings you a sensation, it brings you relaxation, it brings you, as you say, clarity, right? It gives you time to diverge and, divulge in everything that you're thinking about and clear your head. So I agree with the same thing. It's not so historical based, but same sort of thing, I think.
And it exists in the present, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
It's one of those places that it doesn't really matter about the past.
No.
Love the history and everything. I know you guys love the history as well, but at the end of the day, when you're smoking a cigar, it's about the here and now.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
It's about the here and now, and nothing else really matters.
No.
And there's no fear in the present.
No, exactly.
Unless like the room is on fire that you're sitting there. There is no.
You had a mishap with a lighter somewhere and it's just burning up your leg, all gone.
Yeah.
But,
fear might be a good thing in that circumstance. It might get you moving.
It might protect you there.
Yeah. It's kind of like a meditation, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just another form of meditation.
It is.
I feel like you have that same sort of thing where you enjoy it through.
Yeah. I find it with myself, when I'm sampling a cigar, I'm thinking about the cigar and everything else just disappears. And that's why I refer back to the meditation thing, because meditation is very similar. You kind of acknowledge your thoughts, but you take yourself back to your breath for meditation. But with this, I'm taking it back to the cigar. I'm always trying to find the tasting notes, that understand the strength, the blend, learn about the brand. So it takes me into that.
I agree.
Peacefulness.
Yeah, I agree. I think we both spoke about it before, and probably yourself, George, as well. It's, you kind of have the best of both worlds with a cigar, right? It's not, if you put it in the same sentence as say a cigarette, right? You smoke a cigarette for an addiction, or just to you need that kind of buzz or whatever. With a cigar, you have the best of both worlds. You can, as you say, divulge into the strength profile, the flavor profile, what it is you're getting. You can give yourself that choice to actually think about all these things, or you can do the complete opposite, and you can take that time, but then you don't have to think about anything. So then it's kind of, you can be in solitude with your own thought or process and just kind of flow through it and give yourself that purpose or whatever.
It's a wonderful contradiction, isn't it?
Yeah. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
It is.
It's really a cool thing, and as I say, it brings then the social aspect and all of that stuff. It brings things like this happening. Get yourself in good rooms with good people, like-minded people.
Like-minded people is a big thing as well.
Something
I'm sure you found this yourselves. I'd love to hear your experiences with this. But you can walk into a sampling lounge, or you can be at a cigar event, right? And everyone around the table is from different backgrounds. and they are totally from different areas of society. They all do different jobs. The one common thing is that they smoke cigars.
Yeah.
But because they smoke cigars, because that is so powerful, the fact that they smoke cigars, everyone's on a complete level playing field. It's kind of like you already know everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of takes everything else out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
You build these friendships and relationships with these people over this tobacco. It's really special. It really is.
Yeah,
And
well, you take it even further. Like it literally grows from the ground. It grows from the earth that we live on. It's, as I say, it puts you in touch. As you said about the history kind of thing, it puts you back in touch with the people from the very start.
Yeah.
It kind of there's a connection there. If you wanted to divulge on that and think about that, then you've got that. You know, there's different avenues to the whole thing.
It's true. Smoke is in our DNA.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a new tagline.
Yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, I'm going to send you some paperwork about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, we'd like to read through it, because as I say, we only know kind of what you've been talking about and things that we've read and seen here and there, but it'd be good to have everything that we can actually sort of digest and take in as much as we want.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool.
It's fantastic. I want to ask you an interesting question.
You've been dying for this.
I have. If you could create your own cigar,
Yeah.
what does that look like? So, talking country of origin, the blend,
Vitola,
like tasting notes, all of that. What is your perfect cigar?
All right. So it would be made in Nicaragua.
You said that, didn't you?
Yeah, it'd be made in Nicaragua. The few different reasons for that. The actual facilities are amazing. The passion in production is amazing. And the quality control is amazing. Yeah, if I was going to make my own cigar, quality control would have to be pretty good.
Of course, yeah.
So it would likely be a perfecto.
Nice.
It'd be a double figurado.
Okay.
Nice, yeah.
It wouldn't be too big. I'd say maximum 5.5 inches, maybe by a 48 or a 50. That's the maximum. And in terms of composition, I'd love to include Connecticut broadleaf in there, but I probably wouldn't include it in the wrapper.
Okay.
Right.
Because it can look quite scary to people. So it would be in there somewhere. But I'd love to essentially, if I made my own cigar, right? If I made my own cigar, it would have to, again, have some sort of weird historical connection. Maybe it would be the cigar that is by King de Brunel, smoked against the chains in that picture. You seen that photograph?
No.
You see that photograph is amazing. It's by King de Brunel, standing in front of these huge chains.
Okay.
The greatest engineer of the 19th century. Actually, I think his father was the greatest engineer of the 19th century. And King de Brunel was more famous than him. And he's smoking a cigar, and it's just an iconic cigar picture. And it'd be sort of a way to bring back something that has been lost.
Okay. See,
With regards to tasting notes, I'd have to speak to people like you.
Well, if you create,
I'd have to speak to you guys because I don't know about yourselves. Like, what sort of flavors would you look for in a cigar?
See, I like earthiness, little slight bitterness. Ideally towards the back end of the cigar. I think if you add that little bit of bitterness, I think it rounds it off really well, in my opinion. The bitterness ideally would be more like a coffee for myself. Yeah. If you could catch that towards the back end of the cigar as it's heating up, I think it complements it really well.
Because it's not an uncomfortable bitterness.
Yeah, of course. Probably a slight bit of pepper.
Okay.
A lot of people kind of move away from spice and pepper and things like that, but I kind of like that. I like a kind of robust flavour profile, if that makes sense. So I think personally that's probably what I would go with. You'd probably be creamier, right? Creamier, smoother. I was
going to say I quite like a smooth, creamy, sweet smoke.
Okay, cool.
I love the coffee notes, the creamy notes, and one note that I got recently. It was from our recent Cigar of the Month video. Was a sweet brioche bread. It's very particular note, but that really blew me away. I really, really enjoyed that.
I like that.
It's very nice. So yeah, just around the the sweetness, but not too much.
Mm.
You know?
Do you know a flavour that I really like in cigars is salted butter.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. A
Yeah.
bit of saltiness in a cigar, really good.
Salted butter and
Yeah.
maltiness. You guys introduced me to the concept of maltiness. I was like, that's what that is.
Yeah.
Right? But that is such an amazing sort of flavour to have in cigars. I don't know what other flavours that really goes with sort of in that sense, but I tend to like cigars that sort of have that sort of buttery density, that maltiness. Again, I like that it's a contradiction. Some spice, but the actual density and viscosity would mean that it's creamy in texture.
Yeah.
And sweetness I find works. I don't know about yourself. I find it works in conjunction with earthiness.
Yeah.
So it's like a scale. It goes up and down for me. There are like sweet spots in that scale.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you've got too much sweetness within a cigar, for my personal palate, I think it just not sickly. But if you was to eat too much chocolate or something, you'd kind of get that sickly feeling, right? With a cigar that's got nothing but sweetness all the way through, I feel like that kind of feeling would come back in my mind.
Yeah.
Not that it kind of make me feel that way, but that thought process would then be there, and it'd be like, it's not kind of, robust enough. It's not given a bit of earthiness and a little bit of spice,
Hollow.
Yeah.
There's a particular taste in cigars that I don't like, which is sweet water.
Sweet water.
See, I always say
Sugar water.
like minerals, when you get that kind of flavour that you can't put, it doesn't really taste of anything. And it's like, it just tastes like water.
Yeah.
Which people kind of can't wrap their head around.
That's interesting.
But I've never had a sweet water.
Sweet water. You'll find it in cigars that in which tobacco is. So you find it in cigars that use tobacco that is from land that hasn't been let fallow. So overused fields.
Okay.
Occasionally you'll find sort of that what I call sweet water flavour profile.
Right, I see.
Which is quite literally, it's, if you think of it, I think of it as a picture, and it's essentially, you've got a big load of sweetness on this side, then a big vacuum, right? Big vacuum, and then sort of a tarry bitterness.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's like there is visibly something missing in the centre. It's like it's been hollowed out.
Okay. See, that's a good way to explain something when you can't quite, because you always have that note that you can't quite understand, right? There's always that one. It's like you can sit there and you can enjoy the same cigar 5-6 times and you might get that note every time, but there's sometimes you just cannot put your finger to it.
I've had that a few times,
Yeah. But that's a good way to think.
Eat more weird things. Eat more weird things, and then you can go, oh, that's that weird flavour.
Yeah, we just try loads of random.
That's durian fruit. Yeah.
I was about to say exotic fruits or something. We'd have to get into all of that, but hollow. That's a good explanation.
Good way of putting it. I've never really thought about that.
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
because you're always, especially when you're reviewing a cigar, and you're kind of sitting there thinking, I don't really know what to say about this bit because I'm getting something, but I don't know what it is. Yeah. And we always tend to say there's something definitely there, and it may be a sweetness or a bitterness or whatever. But maybe hollow is a good way to put it. Like there's definitely like the outer of the flavour, but there's no real centre. There's no real texture to it, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like it's a con, like a Kinder Egg. Mm-hmm. You buy a Kinder Egg, you want it to be chocolate the whole way through. Instead, it's got plastic in it. Yep. What's that about?
And they keep charging you more and more for it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the great shames of the modern age.
Mm-hmm. I agree, 100%. They could at least put such into that stuff than they put in the Bueno.
Yes, they could put that.
If they filled a Kinder Egg with that,
they could put that. That would be phenomenal. Now you're talking.
Very good.
That'd be great.
That reminds me of the ones that you can get these chocolate eggs and you crack open the top and you get a little spoon. And
they're Kinder as well.
Are they?
No, they're not Kinder.
Yeah, they are. Because you get the little hard centre bit, and you get the plastic spoon, and then you got the bit from the Bueno, and then that bit. I'm sure it's Bueno or Kinder.
That's really good.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry.
Very good though.
That sounds really good.
I know where I'm going after this.
That sounds really good.
But I suppose we'll start to kind of wrap things up a little bit, but I know you've got another question for George. A little bit more of a light-hearted, fun question.
Yeah. If you could experience a cigar with 3 people, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Can I add something to it?
Yeah.
Which cigar would you choose?
Oh, okay.
I like that. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
So you've got to pick the cigar that you would choose, and then the 3 people you would choose to enjoy that experience with.
I would. So my first one would be. Well, I'd love to smoke a cigar with Isambard King de Brunel. It's amazing how much we wouldn't exist without him.
Okay.
Suspension bridges, modern tunnelling, vast majority of ship construction, container ships.
So like larger scale engineering.
Container ships, everything. Without his sort of inventions, we wouldn't have any of these things, and the world would be a very different place.
Of course.
I would smoke one of his cigars, and I'd also ask him, and the main reason why I'd like to smoke a cigar with him is I'd be burning to ask him why he only ever smoked cheap Dutch cigars.
Put him on the spot.
Yeah.
He's sitting there like, I don't
come
know.
on, mate. You invented the suspension bridge.
Yeah.
You created the first tunnel under the Thames. You're smoking... I won't use the word, but yeah.
We get where you're going.
Yeah. So next up, it'd probably be Frank Sinatra, late 1940s.
So back to the music side of things.
Yeah. But I'd also just like to see what he was up to, really, because I know he's probably up to a lot of dodgy things, and it'd be probably quite funny to see.
Was he a dodgy person?
Frank Sinatra, he was friends with a lot of
Questionable people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Italian-American mafia.
I was going to say, is it mafia all connected and stuff?
Well, so in the time of Batista, Frank Sinatra would fly into Cuba with hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash fairly regularly. But then Batista was running a mob state. So many people who were associated with the mob would fly into Cuba with large amounts of cash, gamble it in the mob's casinos in Cuba to wash the money.
Right.
So, yeah. But Frank Sinatra, I mean, just like there's so many reasons why people want to smoke a cigar with Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
You can imagine them all. Just a legend. Yeah. Not
Fair
that the
enough.
mafia are legends. And
a lot of stories, though, I can imagine.
Yeah,
I think we obviously spoke about this on one of the first podcasts we did with Huey, and I said, I forgot his name, Jordan Belfort, the guy who's depicted in Wolf of Wall Street. Loads and loads of dodgy things, massive sort of Wall Street crashes, all of that stuff. But I think them kind of people are the ones that bring the story.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to understand what goes through their head kind of thing and what got them or led them to that situation. So I suppose it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's similar. I just love to know the way his mind works. You know, the way his mind. Frank Sinatra always sang flat. You know? And he wasn't the best dancer. In order to be a singer, he also had to be a dancer at the time.
Right.
Yeah. And there were so many things stacked against him, but he still became the voice. You know, he was the man. Yeah. And I'd love to know the mentality that brought him there. My third person would be my grandfather, who is alive. And I'd love to smoke a cigar with him. He stopped smoking cigars before I started smoking cigars, but he smoked cigars since he was very young. And perhaps I'd like to go back in time and I'd like to smoke a cigar with him. He joined the Navy as a boy sailor. He joined the Navy when he was 14, ran away to sea, and he was smoking cigars in the Navy then. And I know they got some pretty wild things. They saw Frank Sinatra in Rio 1953, for instance, with Count Basie, for free because they were just wearing Navy uniforms. And loads of crazy stories. And I would love to have smoked a cigar with him.
That's fantastic.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's nice. Connection, history. You got 2 figures and then someone that you...
Oh, the cigars? You asked me about the cigars, right?
Yep.
Yeah. With Frank Sinatra, he smoked San Luis Rey.
Right, okay.
Yeah, he smoked San Luis Rey. So I forced him to smoke a cigar that wasn't San Luis Rey that he probably wouldn't like, and I can see his reaction.
Fair enough.
Yeah, with my grandfather, it probably would have been a King Edward that he'd nicked off the ship.
Right. Makes sense, fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Those are my 3. How about yourselves?
I can't remember who I said in the first episode, to be perfectly honest. They're probably going to change.
So I think we discussed our dream podcast guests.
Oh, is that what it was?
So that's what it was. But I mean, I guess the answer's still apply.
I think for me, my stepdad, he smokes cigars here and there. He likes to smoke. He works offshore, so he has like King Edwards and things like that. That are kind of easy accessible, no storage as such. But but I'd love to just sit down. I have done a couple of times, but I don't think it'd ever get old.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of, you can always talk to him about everything, and he's very into history and stuff as well. So like when it comes to like the wars and stuff, he can chew your ear off for absolutely ages. So it's like a little bit of a connection as well as, informative as well. So probably him to begin with. I don't know what cigar I'd make him. He likes Cuban cigars. It'd probably be something like a Monte Especial or something like that, because I'd probably just tailor it a little bit more to him. Second, I think I'd stick with people like Jordan Belfort, something like that. Cigar, I'd probably, I don't really know, to be perfectly honest. I'd probably get him to choose him, to be honest.
I think that'd be a Monty A, wouldn't it?
Yeah, something big, something state-of-the-art kind of expressive, if you like, something like that. Again, same sort of reason, informative, just like to talk to him about what got him to where he got to and all of that stuff. And as I say, he's come out the other end of it. He's done his time in prison, all of that stuff, and he's now very marketable, switched his life around, and he's made a business through legit things as well. So he's managed to do it on both sides of the scale. So it'd be insightful to understand all about that. And you're going to have to give me a minute because I'm going to have to try and think of another one. So Lewis, I'm going to come to you so you can choose your next two.
Goodness me. First one, I think my one's a really obvious one. Joe Rogan, of course.
Yeah.
I love that guy. I don't know anyone that doesn't like him. And it would have to be a Foundation, probably David. I know that he loves Foundation cigars.
Yeah.
And he had his own blend given to him as well.
Yeah.
So that was, in fact, I'd like to try that one.
Okay.
So I'd like to smoke that with him. Second one, probably someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Good shout.
I know myself.
I can't remember what he smokes.
I remember the other two things I said.
Do you know what he smokes?
Cohiba.
Do you know I don't?
Oh, no,
Do you know
that's
I
who
don't,
I was thinking of.
I don't know what he smokes.
Who's this? Sorry.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Someone once told me Partagas D4s.
Great choice.
I doubt that because it would look like he's holding a pencil.
I was going to say, it would look like
He'd need a Texas Lancero or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I just love to hear about his knowledge within the film industry, really, because that was one of my passions growing up. I wanted to be an actor, so I'd ask him all about that. Not sure about the third person, though.
Yeah, I think I figured mine out, and I remember the two people that I said outside of Jordan Belfort, and it was Michael Jordan and Steph Curry.
I thought
because
about
I know they're
Jordan,
both sport backgrounds, obviously top of their game. Myself, love sport, always have done. And knowing that they enjoy cigars on a regular occasion when they win things, all that, it kind of ties together. So I'd like to sit there and go into all the depths of sport and what made them get to there and how they, all like the footwork and the legwork that they had to put in to get to that point.
Yeah.
So again, insightful and.
That's a good point, actually. And if I could throw out another name there, I think it'd be really cool to smoke cigars with, right? And I thought this for a while, because World War II, you're in an aeroplane, right?
Right.
Yeah, and there's two. When you're in a plane, you're sitting right by an oxygen tank. It's a tiny little space if you're in a fighter, and you're sitting right by an oxygen tank. And someone told me, it's quite reputable, I'm looking for evidence of this at the moment.
Right.
There was a man called Paddy Finucane, right? And Paddy Finucane did exist. I know a lot about Paddy Finucane. Paddy Finucane was what you call a Battle of Britain ace. Yeah, so he was in the Battle of Britain. He's one of the pilots who stopped the German invasion and against all the odds. But someone told me that in his Spitfire, he had a cigar holder fitted, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now, Paddy Finucane, an amazing guy, he shot down like 20, something like, I think it was about 25 enemy crafts. He became an ace after 5. Yeah.
Right.
Most people only shot down a couple in the whole war. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
He became what you call a squadron leader at, I think, 23 years old and died when he was 24. Right. But I just want to know the mentality of someone who goes up, right, in a bit of tin and aluminium, right? Yeah. For half an hour, expecting to die every time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd love to know the mentality of someone who goes, do you know what I'm going to put right by the giant oxygen tank, pure oxygen, most flammable thing in the universe? I'm going to put a cigar holder because, I don't care.
Yeah, that's what I mean, the mentality side.
I'd love to know the mentality of these people. These sports people. Rogan, I'd love to know his mentality. How has he done it for so many years? And he's just,
literally made it to the top of their game. It's insane. As you say, it comes down to that, trying to figure out what sets them apart. How do they manage it? And I think that's probably what would be the topic of conversation for the old time, probably. If you figured out your final guest or your final person.
Not really. The only person that's popping into mind is another actor, but I don't know if he smokes cigars, and that's Rowan Atkinson.
Okay.
I love that guy. Like, he's fantastic. Like, Mr. Bean, Blackadder.
I think we had a conversation
a
while back, and you said that you kind of not looked up to him, but looked up to him in terms of what he did and what you tried to do, or not tried to do, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, he was the reason I wanted to be an actor. And he kind of inspired some of my humour. A lot of my humour comes from my dad, but a lot of it also comes from Rowan Atkinson. And I think I'd love to share a cigar with him as well.
That's a really good shout.
Maybe this podcast will go out and Rowan Atkinson will see it and he'll come along. He'll reach out to you.
Pop me an email. We'll get you booked in.
But I think that kind of rounds everything up.
Yeah, there's one more question, and that's for me or not for me?
Oh, no brain. This one is definitely for me, 100%. As I said at the start before lighting it, absolute pleasure from start to finish every single time. So definitely a cigar that will go into my general rotation, has been in my general rotation, and I think it's spectacular. So hats off.
Yeah,
fantastic. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
And for me, again, I mean, can't fault it. Really, it's so smooth. There's a sweetness there, a little bit of slight pepperiness, but it's got a great. It's not too complex, but it's not underwhelming. It's perfect.
It's complexity there, but it's kind of just narrow, easy to understand. It's
wonderful.
It's
really is.
Fantastic.
And I presume that yours is for
definitely.
you.
Yeah, mine's for me. I've this cigar. Ever since I first smoked, it's been one of my sort of top 3 cigars of all time. The Olmec.
I remember you saying that it was one of your favourites.
Yeah, it's just.
I can definitely see why.
Every time I smoke it, I get something slightly different, and that's what I look for in a cigar. I get something slightly different in a good way. I notice things. It's like going back to the same photograph painting every time, and every time you notice something different. And the complexity gets me every time. And it tastes like salted butter sometimes.
Enjoyable, 100%.
Well, George, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
Absolute
you.
pleasure, as always. We always look forward to your company. It's just fantastic.
This has been a long-awaited podcast episode. I think it's, as I say, the guys on the other end of the camera will also agree.
Oh, wow.
Very insightful.
Thank you.
Full of knowledge as always, and as I say, we always refer to you as our encyclopedia of cigar knowledge. So I don't think we could give a better.
Anything else? I will destroy a house if I try. But and likewise, it's actually such a genuine pleasure to come and spend time with you, smoke a cigar, and just get to speak to you again. I always learn so much myself speaking to you, and the way that you view cigars and the way that you work with them, the way you talk about them is incredible. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's very kind.
Much.
But if you guys did enjoy this episode, please leave a like down below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify if you haven't already. And until next time, stay safe and happy herfing. Peace.